Welcome back, everyone. Dr. Carl Giordano here with you today with another lecture that I think you'll find very informative. This lecture will unscramble this topic of lipids. I will go through what each of these are so it's not confusing, and more importantly, we'll talk about why this topic is so important. This topic of lipids is important because of its effects on health span and lifespan in the diet category. I receive a lot of questions by email about this topic. The language of fats can be confusing, so let me try and explain this. But this topic is not only front and center with cardiovascular disease, this topic also provides information on every cell membrane in your body. The cell membrane is made up of lipids, and it is the barrier that decides what gets into and out of every cell in your body. So this topic has enormous health implications and may very well be at the origin of most chronic diseases that we hear about today. Now, as a layperson, you use the word fat to describe all of these things collectively. But as a physician, we use the word lipid. Lipids are a class of organic compounds that are insoluble in water, and there are three types of lipids: cholesterol, phospholipids, and triglycerides. Cholesterol has this sterol backbone. Phospholipids have a phosphate and a glycerol group with these two tails. These tails are fatty acids. Triglycerides has a glycerol cap with three tails. And again, these tails are fatty acids. So fatty acids make up phospholipids. Fatty acids make up triglycerides. Fatty acids can also be its own unique structure. And this is what the fatty acid looks like that make up these tails. So fatty acids have a terminal carboxyl group and a hydrocarbon chain. So fatty acids are not only important because they make up the tails of these two structures. Fatty acids themselves are separate individual structures making up oils and butters that you hear about. And just briefly, saturated fats typically are solid at room temperature and make up your butter. Unsaturated fats are typically liquid at room temperature and make up all of your oils. And there are multiple types of unsaturated fats: polyunsaturated, hydrogenated, partially hydrogenated, and trans fats, and we'll talk about those. But this slide is a good slide in that it's going to unscramble that opening slide, and we're going to go through each of these one by one so you understand how important all of these are to lifespan and health span. Now, various lipids have different functions. Phospholipids and cholesterol make up your cell membrane. Phospholipids act as gatekeepers. They determine what molecules can get into and out of your cell. Other molecules may require a protein transport mechanism to get into and out of your cell, but we're going to focus just on the lipid component today. Now look, the tails of the phospholipids make up the cell membrane. These fatty acids determine the characteristics of the cell membrane. If these tails are saturated or unsaturated or trans, they all impact the permeability and the function of the cell membrane. As the fatty acid tail changes, you change the composition and the function of your cell membrane. And you can see how the cholesterol also makes a part of your cell membrane. Now, the triglycerides really don't function with regards to your cell membrane. They function with regards to storing energy in your body. And again, this is a representation. The glycerol group with the three tails, this is an organic representation. The glycerol group with the three tails. Now, the triglycerides store energy. When you eat, about the first 1,600 calories are stored as glycogen, and the calories after that are converted into triglycerides. And these triglycerides are stored in your fat cells. When you pinch your love handles around your waist, you are feeling your adipose cells filled with triglycerides. Triglycerides are also the most common form of fat in the bloodstream. So let's talk about these fatty acid chains because they are so important. Now, the first fatty acid we're going to talk about is the saturated fatty acids, or the saturated fats. They are considered, when they are an individual component, stable. They're unlikely to be oxidized or spoil. This is like your butter or your lard. With regards to cell membranes, they provide stability and structure to the cell membranes. When your fatty acid tails are saturated, they provide stability and structure. They do not have double bonds. All the carbon atoms are saturated with hydrogen. There are no double bonds. Now, your body has the ability to synthesize all the fatty acids that your cells and your body needs. You do not need to ingest butter or lard. The second fatty acid that we're going to talk about are the unsaturated fats, or the unsaturated fatty acids. They are considered less stable. When they are an individual oil, they are more susceptible to oxidation or rancidity. Now, with regards to the phospholipids in the cell membranes, they provide flexibility and fluidity. They are considered as an individual item liquid at room temperature. And again, they have at least one double bond. You can see here the double bond. So that means that this carbon atom is not saturated with hydrogen atoms. And whether double bonds exist determine whether this is a solid or a liquid at room temperature. Now, just recognize the more double bonds you have, the more unstable these fatty acids are. Now, we do not have the enzymes in our body to produce all of these fatty acids, these unsaturated fatty acids that our body needs. Some of these we need to ingest. And don't forget, although we're talking about fatty acids, we're talking about the tails on these phospholipids as well. So polyunsaturated fatty acids. They have more than one double bond. Here you can see you have two double bonds. And the more double bonds you have, the more unstable or susceptible the fatty acid is to oxidation via air, light, or heat exposure. The double bonds in the fatty acid molecules are very reactive. They tend to react with oxygen, forming chain reactions of free radicals. But again, you need both saturated and unsaturated fatty acids for your cell membrane. But these free radicals can cause damage to the cell membrane, damage to your proteins, damage to your DNA. The free radical damage is one of the mechanisms behind inflammation, cardiovascular disease, neurodegeneration, aging, the onset of cancer, everything. They disrupt the normal cell function, the normal intake of nutrients into and out of the cell, and the export of waste from the cell. So the more double bonds you have, the more flexible the membrane, the more fluid the membrane, but the more unstable the membrane. So remember I said you don't need saturated fats in your diet, as your body can synthesize those. Our body, however, does not have the ability to synthesize all unsaturated fats, and we have to ingest some of those. The ones that we have to ingest are referred to as essential fatty acids. So omega-6 fatty acids and omega-3 fatty acids are considered essential. Omega-6 has two double bonds, omega-3 has three double bonds. And you can see here three double bonds on this representation, two double bonds and one double bond. So you need omega-6 and omega-3 double bonds. Now, the single double bond, or the monounsaturated fats, also referred to as omega-9 fatty acids, are considered the most healthy in terms of ingesting or using an oil because it has less double bonds. The more double bonds you have, the more likely this is to react with oxygen, forming chain reactions of free radicals. So you need all of these. But throughout history, the ratio of omega-6 to omega-3 was anywhere from 1 to 1, and depending on what you read, this ratio could be 4 to 1 or 1 to 4. But today, our ratio of omega-6 to omega-3 has changed from 15 to 1 to sometimes 20 to 1, depending on what you read. And we'll talk a little bit more about that in a while, but I think you can start to understand we are changing the permeability and the function of our cell membrane in our body with these ratios. This is what's changing. And don't think you can simply correct this by ingesting more omega-3s. You have to lower your omega-6 fatty acids in your diet, and the omega-6 fatty acids are found in seed oils, and we'll talk a little bit about that in a little while. And I'm not going to get into the subtypes of omega-3 fatty acids, but there are 3 subtypes: ALA, EPA, and DHA. The ALA are found in plant-based sources, flax seeds, chia seeds, hemp seeds, and the EPA and the DHA are found in algae. Now, fish eat algae, so you can get EPA and DHA or those types of omega-3s in fish diets, but don't think fish make these omega-3s. Fish just eat the algae that make the omega-3s. Just so you know, the chia seeds, the hemp seeds, the walnuts have a good omega-3 to omega-6 ratio. And you can get those omega-3s and omega-6s from those plant sources. Okay, let's talk about the hydrogenated or partially hydrogenated fats. Now, these are artificially created to decrease susceptibility to oxidation or rancidity via exposure to air, light, and heat. They are adding a hydrogen atom to alter the organic chemistry structure. Now, remember I said our cell membranes are designed to have a certain number of double bonds or saturated and unsaturated fats. But when you start changing these molecules, you start changing the function and the permeability of your cell membrane. So we're going to talk about how introducing new oils into our diet is essentially changing our cell membranes and how our body is changing and how this is related to all chronic diseases today. Trans fats are, again, a type of partially hydrogenated fat that, again, is created in an attempt to decrease susceptibility to oxidation or rancidity via exposure to air, light, and heat. And you can see how there's this kink in the molecule. And again, when it gets incorporated into your cell membrane, you are altering the function of your cell membrane. Trans fats are partially hydrogenated fats and are linked to several health issues. We want to stay away from trans fats and partially hydrogenated fats as they are changing the composition of our cell membranes. So things to consider: what oil to use for garnishing, what oil to use for cooking, and we'll talk about fried foods. And the types of oils are basically plant matter oils or seed oils. All of these are considered vegetable oils. So when choosing an oil to use with your food that we ingest, you need to consider what types of fatty acids it consists of, because the oils in our diet can change our cell membranes and have consequences to our health. So you can see olive oil is low in saturated fats. Like I said, you don't need to ingest these, your body can make these. So you want an oil that is low in saturated fats and high in omega-9s, the one that has the one double bond. You want to have a low omega-6 fatty acid in your oil, because the problem today is we're ingesting too many omega-6s. So olive oil and avocado oil kind of meet that criteria. The palm oil, just high in saturated fats. The coconut oil, high in saturated fats. And saturated fats are associated with cardiovascular disease. So we want to have as few of those in our diet as possible. Again, we want to be low in saturated fats, high in omega-9, low in omega-6. Seed oils are high in omega-6 fatty acids. So these are promoting that 15-to-1 or 20-to-1 ratio of omega-6 to omega-3s, which we do not want. You increase your risk of free radical formation and change the function of every cell membrane in your body with high omega-6 usage. So there really aren't any seed oils that should catch your eye. When it comes to cooking, it's not just the omega-6 content. We also have to consider the smoke point, which is the point at which we start to degrade the double bonds by oxidizing them when we cook or heat the oil. And we also want to consider the oxidative stability. So the oxidative stability and the smoke point are important. Obviously, we want the low omega-6 content as well. But if you look at these characteristics of oxidative stability and smoke point, you get to the olive oil and the avocado oil, which should be your choice. These are the ones you want to pick for cooking and for garnishing. Understand that any oil that you burn or reuse, like with deep frying, you also create toxic aldehydes and trans fats. So you don't want to burn any oil, but the oils you want to pick are the olive oils and the avocado oils, and you want to stay away from the seed oils for a variety of reasons. The omega-6 content, the fact that they have low oxidative stability, and a lower smoke point. So the seed oils don't have great characteristics because of the high omega-6 content as well as their increased risk of oxidation when heated. The seed oils have to undergo a lot of processing to produce them. High temperatures, harsh chemicals are used, often resulting in harmful byproducts like trans fats. Preservatives are added, as well as synthetic antioxidants, some of which are known as carcinogens. Chemical solvents such as hexane are used to optimize yields. So all of this again leads to unprecedented levels of omega-6 fats, which disrupt the composition of cell membranes, promote oxidative stress and inflammation. This whole process looks more like a gasoline refinery process than a process of making a food, versus just pressing olives or avocados for those types of oils. Now, fried foods are particularly bad because the oils used are seed oils. They are typically reused in the frying baskets again and again, and when you reheat polyunsaturated fats again and again, the double bonds become disrupted and oxidized, and trans fats and aldehydes are created. So fried food is a triple whammy. It's not just the high omega-6 content in the oils used. It's not just the processing. It's then the reheating of the oils used typically with fried foods in baskets. So you want to stay away from the fried food. To no surprise, fried food is very much associated with health issues of obesity, heart attacks, inflammatory bowel disease, type 2 diabetes, prostate cancer, and breast cancer. So what does it all mean? Now, fat has always been part of the human diet. Seed oils were only introduced into the food supply about 100 years ago and has since increased about 1,600%. We have seen a 700% surge in chronic health illnesses since 1935. We now know that we are altering every cell in our body to function differently from what it was intended to do. So this surge in health issues should come as no surprise to anyone that understands this. Seed oils, while low in saturated fat, are higher in certain types of unstable polyunsaturated fats and have a much stronger correlation to heart disease and other chronic illnesses, from diabetes, autoimmune disease, and cancer. So death by lifestyle increases the incidence of death with severe obesity, heavy smoking. But look where seed oil is. It's way up there. Sugar increases your incidence of death. Air pollution, red meat. Most of the red meats that we ingest have omega-6 fatty acids in them. Those are omega-6 fats in the meat. Okay, let me just, within 2 slides, just clarify cholesterol, which is that third lipid. Cholesterol is in a class of certain molecules called sterols, and human cells can synthesize all the cholesterol, which is an essential structure in human cell membranes. The body needs cholesterol to make hormones. The cholesterol is the backbone of all these other hormones. You can see the similarity to them all: estrogen, testosterone, vitamin D, and bile. Plant sterols can be found in vegetables and fruits, legumes, oils, nuts, and seeds. So again, the cholesterol is part of your cell membrane, so we need cholesterol. Now, LDL and HDL are not cholesterol. They are cholesterol particles. They are lipoproteins that are part lipid and part protein. These particles have been referred to as vessels that carry free cholesterol and cholesterol esters and triglycerides and phospholipids and vitamins and other proteins around the body. Now, there is an ApoA and an ApoB protein in this particle, which is needed for delivery of these items around our vasculature, since cholesterol is not water soluble. These two types of proteins are associated with these proteins, the ApoB and the ApoA protein. Now, the ApoB LDL particle has more fat, and it's more prone to get stuck inside the endothelial cells as they deliver these components across the cell membranes. They can be oxidized, and when that occurs, that's what kicks off the atherosclerotic cascade. Now, the ApoA HDL particle crosses the endothelium in both directions more easily and can actually suck out the cholesterol from the cell. So that's why we discuss the ApoB LDL particle as the bad particle. It's not the cholesterol that's bad, it's the ApoB LDL particle that can be problematic. So the take-home message. You should know about lipids. You should probably spend as much time understanding this topic as you spend when you're purchasing a car. The category of lipids is incredibly important as it affects every cell membrane in our body. And then we wonder where all the chronic diseases come from. For all of you that think fried food is fun and celebratory, it's associated with barbecues and picnics, and believe it's okay, the message is no, it's not okay. There is nothing okay about chronic diseases associated with fried food. No segment of the population should be spared with this false fried food message that it's okay. As we evolved from no fried food to fried food, we did not know the harms, but we know them now. Limit your seed oils. I hope you now understand why. You are changing the cellular membrane in every cell in your body, which is associated with chronic diseases. And number 3, there are a lot of things to enjoy in life. Does it really have to be seed oils and fried food? So, well, I hope this information explains the why. I think the why is important because we've been telling people what to do for years, but it's not sinking in. It's time to try and deliver a different message, and I'm hoping that the message of why will have a greater impact. So good luck, be well, every day does indeed make a difference.